If you're wanting to start investing or have already started investing and want to make sure that you are on the right path, then this video is going to be for you. Now, before I get started, I want you to know that the purpose of this video is not to teach you how to become a millionaire quickly. This is not to teach you some get rich quick thing. This video is to make sure that you have the highest odds of becoming both wealthy and rich. This is Money Mastery, where we help you master your money. Let's get into it. The number one thing you have to do to become wealthy and to start investing is have a budget. If you're not managing your own personal finances, then you cannot expect to be successful in the investing world. Now, I hear comments all the time on my TikTok videos, especially, of people complaining that they want to make money and then they want to spend that money. But if you want to be a successful investor, you need to free up as much money as you can to go towards your investments. As anything, you get what you pay for. And if you're putting as much money into your investments as you can, then obviously you're going to see a bigger return faster. Everything is exponential when it comes to investing. So if you have a small amount, you're going to stay at the bottom of that exponential curve, but the more money you put in, the faster you can get to the more exciting part of that curve. I have another video about budgeting if you want to check that out, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to assume you know how to budget and I'm going to move on. The next part is to avoid bad debt as much as necessary. Now, this is a very popular thing that's talked about, good debt versus bad debt. Anybody who's read Rich Dad Poor Dad or heard about it knows the concept of good debt versus bad debt. So avoid bad debt, i.e. cars, houses that aren't investments, things like that that are sucking money from your wallet every month and not giving you anything in return monetarily. Instead, you want to build good debt, which are things that are giving you money every month. The biggest example is probably real estate. It's probably the most well-known version of good debt. So you've got your budget set up, you've got your debt analyzed, and even if you have a little bit of bad debt, it's okay. We'll take care of that as we go through the investing process. What I'm going to talk about now is credit. Now, don't go to sleep. Everybody thinks credit's a boring thing, and yes, credit can be kind of boring, but it is so important if you want to be building your investment portfolios for the long term. The two things that I did to get a very good credit score, I have about a 760 to 800 credit score in about 2 years' time. Secured deposit credit cards and secured deposit loans. These are great for people with zero credit or really bad credit because you're putting money into it up front, so it has basically zero risk for the people giving you the money. I will explain what those are in a different video, but for the purposes of this video, just know that those are my two top recommended ways to build credit. Now, a highly underrated way of building wealth is what I often refer to as the boring path to being a millionaire. And it's very boring, it's not sexy, it's not attractive, but it is the most successful way to become a millionaire. Granted, this path will take you probably 20, 30, 40 years, depending on how much money you put into it, but it is virtually a guarantee that at the end of that process, you will be a very wealthy person. I'm talking about investing into something like a Roth IRA or an automated investment account. These are very boring, and some people will even tell you not to put money into them because the returns aren't great. Usually you can expect single-digit returns. On a good year like this past year, you might get something like 27% return. On average, you're going to get 8 to 10% return on an automated stock investment account. Now, that's not a super attractive way to invest your money, but it is a almost guaranteed way to build wealth, and despite everything else that I'm going to talk about in this video, I highly recommend that you do this as well in the background. That way, if everything else fails, you're still guaranteed to be a millionaire. Almost. There's always a little risk involved. The key to these long-term investment plans is to never sell them until you're at the point where you're ready to start slowly withdrawing off of them for a retirement. That could happen at 35 or 40 years old if you start young enough. The point is that you're wanting to not interrupt the compounding effect of this money. Like I said, at the first it's going to be very slow growth, but it's going to be parabolic and grow very rapidly if you leave your money in to grow. Now that the boring part's over, let's get into the more exciting part. And this is going to be actually dependent on your goals. So this is where it gets personal. This video said that it was going to be for you. So individually, I want you to think about your goals as I talk about these things. Now I'm going to break these goals up into two sections. You're going to have long-term goals and short-term goals. Now your long-term goals may be satisfied by the boring part. And for me, that's how it is. My long-term goals, for the most part, are satisfied by my boring investing path. Your short-term goals, on the other hand, those could be completely different. Now, if you're satisfied with waiting 20 or 30 or 40 years to become wealthy and retire, then by all means, you don't really need to have very many short-term goals except for to maybe increase the amount of money you're putting into those long-term accounts. If your goal is to retire as young as possible, like me, then you need to set some goals for the short term. And by short term, I mean like within 5 years or within 10 years. So they're not like within a few months, although you could set those kind of goals and they should be aligned with your 5 to 10 year goals. Those 5 to 10 year goals are going to be the important one, like retire or be financially free within 5 years. Very possible, but it's going to take more work than the long-term boring path. So let's talk about short-term. Your most important short-term goal is going to be to build an emergency fund. Now, I know that's boring, and we're supposed to be talking about exciting stuff here, but the importance of emergency fund cannot be overstressed. Now, that emergency fund in and of itself can be in the form of an investment. I keep my emergency fund in an automated investment account through Acorns. The whole point of an emergency fund is not necessarily because you might need it, although that is important. It's really to help your mindset. One of the biggest things in investing is assessing your risk tolerance. If you have no money to fall back on, if your investments go to zero, if you lose all the money that you put into your investments, then you're going to have a hard time really putting anything in. And for your short-term goals, and to meet your short-term goals, you may need to take some riskier routes. And you're going to be able to have the risk tolerance for that if you have a solid emergency fund. But how much should that emergency fund be? To put it simply, I would recommend 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses in an emergency fund. So that means if you completely fall flat on your face, you have 3 to 6 months to pick yourself up off the ground and figure out some source of income, whether that's get a job, whether that's start a business, whatever you got to do. I think pretty much anybody within 3 months should be able to get some source of income that's going to be paying their bills and get them started again on their investing path. That's worst case scenario, but that's why you need an emergency fund. Now that we got the boring part out of the short-term goals out of the way, let's talk about the exciting part of your short-term goals. Now, probably one of the most popular things that I see on social media right now is day trading stocks. And day trading stocks doesn't necessarily mean you're trading your stocks every day. It's referring to a short-term mindset of investing in stocks. So our boring path is going to be, 20, 30 years in a stock portfolio or an ETF. Your short-term goals may include like a call option on Tesla or something like that. If you believe that a stock's overvalued, then you could put a put option. If you think a stock's undervalued, you could do a call option. If you don't know what those are, there's lots of videos on YouTube that'll teach you about call options and put options. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of day trading. I don't really recommend it, so I'm not going to talk about it a whole lot, but it is something very popular, so I figured I would at least mention it. People do make millions off of day trading, but the percentage of people who try it and make money off of it is pretty low. But it can be a route to build a lot of money really fast with the right tools and knowledge. If that is what you want to get into, I recommend spending hours and hours and days watching every YouTube video you can find on how to do day trading or just short-term stock trading. To be clear though, I don't really view that as investing. I view that as trading. Essentially, that's what you're doing. You're like buying something that's undervalued, selling it once the value goes up. It is technically investing, but it's not investing in the traditional sense, but it can still make you a lot of money. Another short-term way that a lot of people make a lot of money is through flipping houses. Biggest barrier to this is money. Most people don't have money or don't want to spend the time on it, but if it's something you really want to do, there are plenty of people out there that are willing to give you the money for it in exchange for a piece when you sell it. Again, this is kind of like trading real estate. Buy it cheap, fix it up, sell it high. It is technically an investment, but it's not really a traditional form of investing. But I think it's a great way to make money. I would flip houses well before I got into options and call trading. The route that most of you are probably going to want to take though is going to be the route of a side hustle or business. Now I know that sounds really scary, maybe not as scary as flipping houses, but if you start a side hustle, some kind of online affiliate marketing, or maybe you're really good at some sort of craft or service and you sell that on the side, those kind of things that bring in extra money are really going to help you to fuel your other investments. Now, the options for these are limitless. If you want to start a side hustle or a full-blown business, it really is limited only by your imagination and ability to work hard for what you want to do. All these options range from basically costing you nothing up front to maybe costing you thousands of dollars up front. But really, anything that you can think of, you can make money with. So those are your three main routes of short-term income. You're either going to start a business, you're going to get into day trading stocks, or you're going to be flipping houses, which in and of itself runs like a business. So let's talk about the long term now. Besides the boring path to being a millionaire, your long-term goals should include something along the lines of generational wealth. This is wealth that will not go away if you stop working. For instance, on your short-term goals, if you stop working on your side business, if you stop day trading stocks, if you stop flipping houses, you're probably not going to be making much money unless you've built a business that can be automated and becomes passive for you. That can really work into your long-term goals, and your short-term goals should help you with your long-term goals. But for me personally, my long-term goal is to not have to stress about money at all. I'm not so concerned with being a millionaire as I am concerned with just being able to free up my time to spend with my wife and future kids doing the things that I want to do and not the things that I'm required to do to pay my bills. So set your long-term goals according to that, and there are so many different ways that you can do that. Personally though, I always advocate getting into real estate, and I do have another video on my channel all about how to get started in real estate. You really don't need as much money as people say you do, but you will probably need $5,000 to $10,000 depending on your market and the property you want to get into. I bought my first house hacking property for about $4,000 in a down payment. Once you get to the point where you've built up enough money to really put it into real estate, in my opinion, you've kind of won the game at that point. You've probably achieved some sort of financial freedom if you've played your cards right, and now you're kind of completing side quests. So at this point, you're no longer a beginner, you've got experience, and this tutorial that I'm making really isn't going to give you a whole lot of knowledge if you're already at that point, which if you've done everything that I've said, you're probably close to or at that point. The key takeaways I think you should get from this video: have short-term and long-term goals, make sure you're always on the boring path, but then continue to work on the more exciting short-term goals. You can shortcut the long path, just don't get off of the long path while you're on it. Always have that safety net of knowing that if I lose everything on my short-term, I'm still going to be able to make my long-term goals. I truly believe that anybody can complete this process, and I really hope that this video was able to help you at least feel more confident about the path that you're choosing to go through. So set your personal goals and then choose the path that you need for you, whether that's starting a business, real estate, day trading, whatever you need to do to get to your goals. My number one recommendation is just to get on the boring path now. Start your budget, build your credit, get on the boring path, and then you can build whatever you want from there. If you found value in this, like and of course subscribe. I'd love to help you out some more mastering your money.